What is up, guys? Today we're going to be reviewing a track from My Twisted Heart. He's part of the Outsiders group, which includes Outsider YP, Kestine and Olympio. He's got some serious fire. He didn't just drop one track, he didn't just drop two, he dropped a whole EP with 6 tracks, which we're going to review today. Before we get into this review, I'm just going to let you know I'm going to break each track down individually, what I like about each track, and then at the very end do a whole summary of what I think of the EP as a collection and the visuals and everything like that as well. Let's check it out. First track of this EP, it's very kind of slow paced. It starts off and then with a massive impact. So the first thing I noticed with this track is there's a lot of autotune. We've listened to artists before and there hasn't been that much autotune in their voice. It's quite different to hear, and it's kind of reminds me of 100 Gex in a certain way because of the amount of autotune, but it really does work with the songs here. It does start off slow in this first track, I Don't Need You. Then it hits you with the impact of like these heavy kicks and it just really gels as a song. And another thing I love about this first track is the amount of repetition. I think it's very important for artists to use repetition. I think it's a very cool technique to use, and it definitely kind of makes tracks a lot catchier and kind of more memorable. So it's a good technique to use.
You have me back, living a lie. Just know it's fine, you're always mine. You left me then, I'm still behind, I'm still behind. Our minds are clouded with doubt. I see you swerving the route. You're still afraid of the bound. The opposition is you.
Versus Me, it's definitely a lot similar to the first track of the EP in terms of the slow pacing at the start of the track and then for a massive impact again. What I do love is kind of that natural guitar sound at the start, and quite similar to the first track as well is there is that bit of autotune. After listening to the first track and moving on to this track, the autotune doesn't seem as noticeable as I first listened to it, but I think I'm adapting to it a bit more now as I get through the tracks.
I know the world is burning, I know the sky's on fire, I'm calling. I might just break your heart, I might just break your heart, I might just break your heart, break your heart, I might just break your heart, break your heart, I might just break your heart, break your heart, I might just break your heart.
So Heartbreaker, track number 3, is definitely my favorite. So the first reason is there's a lot of pace straight off the bat. It's quite different. There's a lot of versatility in comparison to the last 2 tracks, and it definitely got me a bit more going. I do love that sound. It kind of reminds me a bit like Porter Robinson-esque kind of sound, which is really cool. I'm a big fan of. So I did find this track a bit more memorable in the sense of the it definitely stuck in my head after listening to it, and I think just the pacing, the build up, and everything, there was a lot of energy in it, which I really love.
There's a silver line, trace of love in here. There's a silver line, all I need is you. It's scary how we just fade away to the memories that sit no more. There's a silver line, trace of love in here. There's a silver line, all I need is you. It's scary how we just fade away to the memories that sit no more.
What I love about Silver Lines is definitely that intro. It's quite similar to in the sense of a guitar starting off in comparison to track number 2 on this EP, but it is that electric sounding does give it that bit more energy, which I really enjoyed. I also love the versatility in the sections in terms of his voice changing and kind of his pacing changing throughout the track. It gave it a lot more versatility, and as well the autotune worked really well for that. I know that sometimes when people do use autotune, it can go sideways when they change pace or change the sound if they more tighter verbiage, and then they go to like the long ahs and long ohs and all that. It can sound absolutely horrendous, but with this mixing and production behind it, as well as My Twisted Heart, it definitely just blends really well together, and I'm glad that it turned out so good.
You gave me a nosebleed, life is not so rosy. Going through this pain, but you ain't never gonna bust me. Say you really like me, but I know you never loved me. I can see your starship hanging right about me. When you killing me, you got me feeling like a zombie. I ain't ruined shit, but all the blames you put it on me. Damaging my mind, but you can never ever run me. Damaging my mind, but you can never ever run me. Underground sex.
So with track number 5, Zombies, the chorus really stood out the most in this track so far, in comparison to the others. What I also loved was the hard impacts as well. Kind of a bit of a throwback to the first 2 tracks, which was really enjoyable. What I love so far in this EP is definitely the versatility. It's just something else.
I don't miss your love, I don't want more time with you no more. I just saw you flash for me, couldn't waste my time no more. I don't know where you might go, I don't care what you might do. But when you get to hell, maybe say hello. When you get to hell, maybe say
Track number 6, Hell Girl, it definitely impressed me in its own little way, in terms of it being very upbeat and energy. Not as much as track number 3, but definitely gave it its nice pace and variety in it. What I also loved about it was the electric sound of it as well. Similar to what I said in track number 1 and 2, that kind of 100 Gex vibe, still had all those hard impacts and stuff like that, which were, you know, a theme throughout the whole EP. But we're going to get into all that in just a second. I could judge all day about these tracks individually, but really, My Twisted Heart didn't have the intention of portraying singular tracks. It's all about the last image, which is the EP as a whole, as well as the image on the screen and everything in between. So I'm going to talk about the visuals. There's no music videos as of yet. This EP is just released quite recently, but just from the photo here that we can see for the album art, it stands out a lot in terms of just popping with that yellow and just the whole image itself. What I love is those little details in this album art, especially up in the corner here on the top left. It has Cork, IRL, referring to Cork Airport, Ireland, which is just a really nice touch. It just gives it that kind of creative aspect, kind of reaches out from the screen. In terms of the EP as a whole, I think the message is very clear. With all the pacing and with the hard impacts, starting off quite slow for some of the tracks, it does give you that impact of like a heartbreak or something crazy just happening and it's out of your control and stuff like that. That's what I love about this EP from the get-go, is that like it's not just the words that are portraying the message of kind of a heart leak, a heartbreak. It's really the sound and him gelling himself together with the autotune and kind of portraying that message really well, especially with having those 2 energetic songs in between. From the listener, you could be like, oh, this is an absolute bop, it's class, blah blah, but in reality it's definitely just like he went through a hard time, or things were happening so fast that, you know, he was trying to keep up, and just from that side of things, not even going into depth in terms of the lyrics, is my perception of it. I could be completely wrong on this, but that's my perception of it. What else I loved about it was definitely the versatility in all the tracks. It really showcased the potential of My Twisted Heart, as well as how talented he is. The changing of the paces, it's the changes of the songs and stuff like that, and he's still able to deliver and still able to, you know, work his way, including the autotune and everything, and it just gels really well. What I also love is his consistency, because the autotune, I know for some artists they use it maybe once or twice because the track will work better with it, but he uses it the whole way through. It might come across as being dependent on it, but I think it's more of like, this is his sound. You know, when you hear this autotune and you hear his voice, you're thinking, oh, it's Empty Heart, which is really cool. And I think if he keeps going with the way he's going, it definitely make an impression. So what I would love to see Empty Heart do in the future is collaborate a lot more. I know he was on Outsider YP's album When the World Ends, and definitely kind of stood out a bit more to me then because he was on that EP. But I do hope he collaborates with a few more. Even a few tracks with Kestin would sound really cool, especially with the different styles in that group. I think it would really just work wonders. And that's our review. Thank you so much for watching our latest review. I hope you enjoyed it thoroughly. If you want to show that you enjoyed it thoroughly, make sure to like, share, and comment down below. If you want to get some free promotion like A Tension here, Crack by Mental, and James Joyce, aka Squinty, just email us at irishrapzone@gmail.com. We'd love to get some posters up here, CDs, whatever it might be Irish rap related on this wall, and absolutely cover it and support the scene as much as we can. And if you really want to support the Irish Rap Zone, make sure to donate to our Patreon, as well as a one-time donation on our PayPal. Would really appreciate it. And as always, guys, we'll see you in the next one.